one of the requirements of parenthood is becoming hyper-aware of firsts. First smiles, first steps, first words. These shehechianu moments stay with us because they represent transition, the beginning of a new chapter, new things to learn, new blessings to appreciate. They help us mark time, which is something that for us as people is important and meaningful. But out of all of those firsts with Elior, with my son, the one that stands out, the one that I can recall most vividly, is the first time we picked him up from camp. 4 hours after leaving him for the first time with someone who wasn't a family member. And for all the parents and grandparents and guardians of babies born around the time of COVID, I know that this is a moment not just etched into my memory. Elior is an explorer. If you were out in the playground or even looking out the window, I'm sure you can see that he is an explorer. He is now and he was then. So Meredith and I were and definitely are accustomed to tears, to cuts and bruises, skinned knees and bumped keppies. But these tears were different. These were tears of betrayal, of anxiety that we were never coming back. And I think, just to be a little less dramatic but still sincere, of real sadness. And when he ran to us, his arms outstretched and tears running down his face, all of my confidence and parental wisdom went right out the window. Because when those other tears come, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. If he's crying because he's hungry, I give him a snack. If he's crying because he's tired, then we can go have a read and a rock and then take a little nap. And if he's fetching because he's uncomfortable, then I can change his diaper and get that Elior smile back on his face in no time. But these tears, they crushed me because I knew that there wasn't going to be an easy fix. And I also knew that these tears weren't going to be a one-off exception to an otherwise blissful camp experience. He was hurting. He was sad. And I couldn't do anything about it except hold him, pull him close and tight against me, wipe his tears and say to him, I know that was hard. I'm sorry that you're sad. I've got you now. I'm always going to have you. Since that day, we've had a lot more of those moments, those times when his tears come and there's not a simple fix. And spoiler alert for my own fatherhood journey, there are many, many more of those moments to come. Something to do with growing up, with developing complex thoughts and feelings and becoming an emotional being. And they are, and they're going to be hard. And it makes sense that they're hard. Because we humans have a biological need to be in control. We need to understand the world around us, how things work, and how to fix them if something happens and they somehow stop working. That's how we're built. We do just fine with hunger cues, with tired eyes, dirty diapers, and skinned knees. And if we take it out of the parental paradigm, I think it's safe to say that we do just fine with our adult problems where the solution is clear. If we get sick, we take some medicine. If we get a flat tire, we put on a spare. If we lose our credit card, we cancel it and we get a new one. For so many aspects of life, the identified issue comes with an equally identified fix. It's when things get a bit more complicated, a bit more nuanced. It's when some or all of that control is taken from us that we can get lost. Because that control, biologically, is meant to protect us, to keep us safe. Without that safety, our responses are far more likely to come from those sources that enter in to fill the void that control leaves. Anxiety, panic, fear, or defensiveness? It's what we refer to in biology as fight or flight. But when it comes to our relationships, with our children, with our partners, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our neighbors, our synagogue brothers and sisters, our relationships in general, we have to create a third option. Because it's only through willingly dropping our emotional safety that we enter into the heart of what it means to be in relationship. Not fighting, not running away. Those are easy. But love, by definition, is not. And it is that third way, that lack of safety, that willful vulnerability that creates holiness. In the book of Malachim and the book of Kings, there's a famous story of Eliyahu Hanavi, of Elijah the prophet. At this point in his narrative, he has worked miracles as the messenger of God and has ended a terrible drought by destroying the false idols and altars of the Israelites and getting rid of the prophets of foreign deities. But in doing so, he has enraged Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab, who has called for the prophet's death. And so for 40 days and 40 nights, he travels through the wilderness, reaching a mountain cave where he hides in hope of escaping his death sentence. But as he is hiding, Elijah is beckoned by God to come out and to stand at the cave's opening. And when he steps out, looking down at the abyss before him and searching for God, there comes up a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks. But, as the text reads, God is not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, shaking all of existence underneath Eliyahu's feet, but God is not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a whirlwind of fire, but God is not in the fire. And then, kol demama daka, a still, small voice. And with that still, small voice, Elijah wraps himself in his clothing, and he talks to God. There are dozens upon dozens of commentaries on these three words, kol demama daka, the still, small voice, with no clear consensus, which coincidentally makes a perfect argument for what I think this story is telling us. That the potential for holiness is found in the moments when we are face to face with one another and there is no easy answer, and maybe no answer at all. And we uncover the holy not by fighting the discomfort or running away from it, but by allowing ourselves to sit in it, not separately as individuals, but united as a chavruta, as a partnership. Because those moments aren't about fixing, which is hard for us, because that is what we want to do. We want to fix, we want to repair, we want to make things easy again. But this still small voice is about seeing, about really seeing, about validating and being present, guard down without the safety of clarity and control. The still small voice is about acknowledging the brokenness that transcends that exterior layer of problem and solution. Not broken routines, tires, or payment methods, but broken hearts, spirits, and wills. Not an easy diaper change or a quick nap, but in that crushing embrace of loneliness, fear, and sadness, where it is only possible to say, I'm sorry, I got you, I'll always have you. Not the hurricane, the earthquake, or the fire. God is in the still small voice of consolation, of comfort, and vulnerability. God is in those times when we let go of our concerns, our anxieties, our inhibitions, our egos, our safety, and put all of ourselves, the entirety of our being, into the truth of the other. And when that truth is sadness, hurt, and pain, then it means God is present when we allow our hearts to break so that theirs doesn't have to break alone. In Judaism, we have a word for that third way. a succinct word for the kol damama daka, the still small voice. We call it tshuva. And it is why we are all here today together. Because this day of days, called Yom HaKippurim, is the mountaintop of an annual journey where we are reminded that tshuva, in its essence, is not about apologizing or admitting our faults and falters. That aspect of tshuva is important, but it is a fix to the defined problem. It is the wind, the earthquake, and the fire. But the still small voice of tshuva, the tshuva of Elul, of Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Kippur, is the return to who we are when we are stripped of our emotional armor and personal concern, when we can submit ourselves to the divine spark embedded within each of us and truly understand, that our raison d'etre, our spiritual purpose, is to fuse our hearts so closely together that they beat together, that they break together, and that they heal together. That is tshuva. And you know what? It is really, really hard. And it's scary, and it's awkward, and it's uncomfortable. And our instincts do everything they can to keep us from reaching that still small voice. Because life is so much easier when we focus on our needs, our concerns, our problems. Life is easier that way. But it's also not what life is meant to be. And it's certainly not what Jewish life is meant to be. Because built into our tradition is the mandate to get closer, to recognize that still small voice, and to become it when someone is in need. That obligation for tshuva is the reason that Shiva is the central ritual focus of mourning in Jewish tradition. It is the reason that for 7 days, those who feel the unbearable weight of loss and grief are asked not to hide or distract themselves, but to pull up a chair and sit in the presence of community with their pain exposed for everyone to see. And it is that obligation for tshuva that requires us to go to that Shiva house and to sit alongside the mourners, ready and willing to let their pain become part of us. And knowing that if we're doing it right, it's going to be incredibly uncomfortable. It means rather than offering suggestions, theological takes, or our own stories, things that make us feel better, emotionally safer, that we allow ourselves to embrace the discomfort and the awkwardness so that the real point of Shiva can be conveyed unequivocally. That those who mourn are not alone. That they are seen, that what they're feeling is okay, is part of what it means to grieve. And that it is abundantly clear to them that we got them and that we're always going to have them. On Yom Kippur, we take that obligation to another level. On Yom Kippur, we take on 25 hours of Shiva. We take on 25 hours where we, like mourners, are obligated to stand before one another, God, and ourselves in our truth, in our most honest form, brokenness and all. And at the same time, without any seeming paradox, we also take on 25 hours where we are equally commanded to see the truth, the honest form of every individual around us, brokenness and all. There, in that tension, in that intense and terrifying coming together of hearts, we might feel a staggering wind pushing our thoughts and our emotions to and fro. But God will not be in the wind. We might feel the earth quake beneath our feet and our sense of balance and confidence thrown, but God will not be in the earthquake. We might feel the fire of embarrassment, of shame, of guilt, but God will not be in the fire. But if we're willing, if we allow ourselves to hear one another, to see one another, to take on the brokenness of one another, then everything else will turn to sheket, to silence. And it'll just be us. And in the silence, we will find the kol damama daka, the still small voice. In the silence, we will find tshuva. One of those dozens upon dozens of commentaries on the Kol Damama Daka comes from the Zohar, the central text of Jewish mysticism. And in this commentary, we read that Rabbi Shimon has his own idea about what the still small voice is. Rabbi Shimon says that it is Kol Shofar, the blasting of the shofar, which seems absurd, because the call of the shofar is anything but still and silent. It's loud and abrasive and jarring. But no doubt in Rabbi Shimon's mind were the Talmudic sources for why we sound the shofar in the first place. And one in particular found in the Midrash of Parashat Chayesara, which asks, why do we sound 100 blasts of the shofar? To symbolize the 100 cries of Sarah as she watched her son depart before Achidat Yitzchak, before the binding of Isaac. What is the Kol Damama Daka according to Rabbi Shimon? It is the tears of a mother for her child. The breaking of a heart, and 3,000 years of us remembering it. That is the still small voice. That is tshuva. That is Judaism, and that is love. We humans like to be in control. It keeps life predictable. It keeps us safe. And when it comes to my baby boy, there is no doubt that my life is significantly easier when his tears come from hunger, from trips and falls, or from some early afternoon pre-nap crankiness. But also when it comes to my baby boy, my son who grows physically, emotionally, and spiritually every day. I know that it is the tears that don't have an easy fix, the ones that stop me in my tracks and break my heart alongside his, that take us beyond safe and comfortable and bring us somewhere holy. Because those tears are like the tears of Sarah. Those tears are an invitation to connect in some magical place beyond what we can expect and what we can know. And I take that invitation. Even when it hurts like hell, I take that invitation. And I hold on to him, and I hug him, and I kiss him, and I whisper in a still small voice the same words that I will whisper to you now, that I pray we whisper to one another, to God, and to ourselves this Yom Kippur and beyond. I know. I've got you now. I'm always going to have you.